our quality of life. At their best, city centers have made it possible to live small but well. Established downtown locations use all the space available. Land is often expensive, so a renovation or a new modern house becomes worthwhile, no matter how tiny the property. But living small can also mean living affordably. For architectural intern Andy Thompson, the solution was a mini-home.
There's an idea that if we were all to live the way we do here in the West, we'd need an additional 10 planets. So instead of saying, well, that's absurd, we can't have 10 more planets to draw resources from, why don't we reduce our consumption, our impact to 1/10? So what we've done here is 1/10 the gas, 1/10 the water, and in fact 1/100th the electrical requirement that a conventional house would have. Many people see it from the outside and have all kinds of preconceptions. Oh, this is too small for me to live in. But then when they see the inside, they feel how light, airy, open it is. I have lived here in the mini-home throughout the summer for 4 months. And I mean, we loved it. Hi. Hey, Kier. The kids love it. I mean, the whole family had input in the design process. With, my 6-year-old sitting around the kitchen table saying, I'd love to have a loft that I can climb up into. Come on up. Go on up. Let him go. The materials that we're using in the mini-home are the greenest we could find. All of the woods that we have, plywood, framing lumber, are all Forest Stewardship Council certified. We selected alternatives to vinyl for pretty much everything. We have a natural rubber floor. The finishes are all plant oil based and beeswax. And we also have no formaldehyde in any of the millwork. The day it came out of the factory, it smelled like a fresh country kitchen, It didn't have the usual being hit with a wall of toxic gas, which most new cars and trailers have.
The mini-home is designed to be comfortably warm and well lit all on its own, without the use of any fossil fuels. This is accomplished with a small and very quiet co-generator that's based on a Stirling engine.
So in a typical house, you have a furnace, a hot water heater, and electricity being generated from a plant somewhere. In the mini-home, we have one unit that does all of that. It's giving you hot water, space heating, and electricity. This is an engine called a Stirling engine, and it can run on biodiesel. So there's no need for propane or fossil fuel. It's a heat engine. So the pistons move and generate electricity, and the bulk of the heat is then transferred into a thermal storage tank, which heats your hot water and gives you space heating. Basically, it's a personal power plant.
All the gear to keep the mini-home running is neatly tucked under the living room floor.
So what we've done here is placed all of the mechanical systems for the mini-home in a raised floor cavity. We've got 3 systems, air system, a water system, and an electrical system. From the solar panels and the wind turbine, we have electrical energy coming into the batteries through a charge controller. The solar panels are actually located right here on the canopy, the entrance to the mini-home. And we can also tilt it to the most appropriate solar angle for the time of year. We have a wastewater tank, which from the kitchen sink, shower, and bathroom sink will go into a gray water system outside of the unit. And then we also have a composting toilet. There's a reason why the mini-home is built as a trailer and not as a house. I've worked on off-grid sustainable housing for over 10 years. And in almost every instance, we have issues where we're bumping up against disincentives to doing green buildings in the building code and in zoning bylaws. That being said, as such, it's a legitimate form of residential dwelling. And if it's prefab, it's light and quick and simple to bring in.
Making the best use of valuable space is increasingly important, especially in big cities like Vancouver. There, in the eastern suburbs, one young architect has set out to green his own small patch by cleverly positioning 2 new houses on one lot. Lucio Picciano crammed ecological ingenuity into every corner.
I was able to split the properties into 2, thereby doubling the density that existed on this lot. Conversely, we had a design problem, which is designing a smaller house. Not only a smaller house, but a smaller house on an irregular lot. On a small lot like this, you really have to pay close attention to all the details, the footprint of the house as well as the landscaping. We don't have a traditional lawn on this property. Everything apart from the house is either path to the house or planters, gardens, flower beds.
A green roof also puts plants right up on the top of the building. A membrane seals the roof so no moisture gets through. A thin layer of soil keeps the weight to a reasonable limit. And then hardy plants, such as sedum and ornamental grasses, are used because they can withstand windy and drier conditions. The green roof also benefits the environment below.
We have been able to slow down the runoff off of this roof with the soil. So basically, we retain rainwater and we add the insulation value to the roof.
The house was designed to take advantage of the prevailing breezes. A tall, thin stair tower acts like a funnel to move air throughout the house. It's all quite simple, and no additional energy is required.
We crack the door or the skylight at the top and the window at the front of the house, and we can actually draw warm air right through the building. So strategically, it worked out for both winter and summer because we can siphon heat up through the building in winter, and we can also siphon excess heat out of the building in summer. By building smaller, we can actually put more of that money into the quality and the details of the house, at the same time reducing our footprint on the planet.
But our urban centers are full of big buildings. Can there ever really be a green skyscraper? Vancouver's False Creek waterfront is being revitalized with new apartment complexes and public gardens. Architect Peter Busby relishes the challenge of greening the city's high-rises.
All around us we have environmental change happening, and I believe fundamentally that architects have a responsibility to be part of the solution. And perhaps some of my perspective comes from, growing up in a time and doing my first buildings in a time when we were fixing sick building syndrome or pulling asbestos out of buildings, thinking 30 years ago that it was the penicillin for buildings. We now know it's the poison. An apartment building is actually very easy to make green. I mean, when we think about the fundamental aspects of it, what is it? It is a way of living more densely. You can put more people on a smaller parcel of land and have less of an impact on the environment.
Peter Busby's architectural team designed 3 of the False Creek complexes.
It's been deliberately created so that all of the living space and the public spaces within the building, dining and kitchen and so on, face to the sunshine. So the shaping of the building is important for daylighting. All of the kind of cranking of the building in this elevation and the terracing of the building up, it's all designed to ensure that daylight gets to all the habitable spaces in the building. We don't need any lights on in these buildings at all. The problem with the sunshine is in the summertime, it's too hot. So normally we just put air conditioning in and we don't worry about it. But if you're trying to design a green building that doesn't have much air conditioning in it, and this building has almost no air conditioning in it, it won't get used that much because the building shades itself. You can see in the arrangement of the balconies and the overhangs and these shading devices, which you can see on the building, they're these metal projecting louver grills. They're specifically designed to cut off the solar angle in the summertime. There's greenery on the balconies and on the roof of the buildings. There's a very strong effort here to extend nature into all parts of the urban environment, garden apartments in the sky.
What can we do about the suburbs? The suburbs surrounding the city of Toronto are expanding at a rapid pace. The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority is determined to prove that sustainability is also possible here. So they put out a call to architects to design the ultimate green suburban house. The proposal attracted many submissions, but the model that won first prize was for a healthy modular house that would generate its own heating and cooling and treat its own wastewater. The model for the house may look like a standard suburban home, but it's full of green surprises. For heating and even cooling this ideal house, the choice was for a geothermal system that taps into the constant temperature of the earth just below the surface. In cold weather, it heats the house. In the summer, it cools it down. Copper pipes filled with refrigerant are buried underground. The refrigerant circulates into and out of the house through the looped pipes. Inside, a compressor unit handles the heat exchange. The house is a comfortable temperature year-round, all thanks to free energy from the ground below.